Welcome back to another episode from the farm here in Tuscany. It's still warm in this part of Italy in November, but in the past 10 days the vineyards have turned from green to scarlet, gold and yellow. I love when we're just driving around, running errands, going to the supermarket and seeing everyone out picking olives. It makes me feel so connected to the land and the people, knowing that we are all at the mercy of the weather. Sunshine and everyone is rushing out to throw down nets and get in a full day of picking. Clouds and approaching rain, everyone is debating whether they should try and pick quickly or whether they should do it afterwards or whether the olives will get soaked. This rhythm unites us, even though olive picking is becoming a dying ritual in Italy. Guido's family's main olive production takes place on the property near Florence, where they cultivate over 3,000 olive trees. You may have seen the video last year when I was olive picking with Bruno and his wife, who work for Guido's family. But here, like many farmhouses in Italy, we have a smaller number of olive trees around the house, about 400, all heavy with fruit. Many of you have asked about my parents. Yes, because of COVID, they were stuck here. My parents adapt very well to this life. They don't watch any television. They're early to rise and early to bed like farmers. They eat almost entirely plant-based, so they just live off vegetables from the orto and fruit from the trees around the house. And they've been helping us every day, repairing shutters, fixing furniture, gardening, watering, painting walls and ceilings, cleaning, waxing floors. Guido keeps saying, can we please just hide their passports so they never leave? Egisto, the caretaker, and his wife Eva keep laughing and saying, how are they so energetic? I guess this is an Australian trait. No matter what the task, most Australians get in and do it thoroughly with a smile without ever complaining. When they heard that Guido was just going to leave the olives on most of the trees around the house because it's too expensive and too time-consuming to pay someone to pick them, particularly because they're on a hillside, so it's not easy to lay nets, my parents said, oh, could we pick them by hand? They worked for days while we were up in Florence. You have to work quickly, otherwise the picked olives will oxidize just sitting in the crates. And then they packed them up in their little panda, found an olive oil mill where somehow, with her rudimentary Italian, my mother made friends with everyone and got them to press their tiny quantity of olives to produce 13 litres of oil for about 10 hours of picking. Apparently the Italians there were all so impressed that my mother and father picked the olives by hand instead of using the machines or the battery-operated pickers that most Italians use these days, that they made an exception. Then when we came back, Guido decided we should try picking the rest of them. My parents and I picked by hand while Guido and a friend used the electric pickers. How fast are you with the machine?
I don't know. It's not that I'm an expert.
You see how many we picked?
Yeah. About a box and a half. So.
See? Boy? Surprisingly, this was the first time Guido had picked olives. Of course, it does look very romantic to a foreigner, and admittedly, I really loved being out on the hillside just chatting away to my parents while we performed this meditative task, running our hands through the leaves and just going slowly but steadily. However, as Guido explained in the episode I made last year, olive trees as a business is quite challenging and virtually impossible to make any profit. However, there is nothing as delicious as the first green peppery oil the week the olives have been crushed. Progress is slow and steady on the pollaio or chicken coop. Fortunately, we have plenty to do on the main house where we live, but the workmen have now constructed the walls and the roof, and finally it's beginning to look like a little house. Guido says in retrospect he probably wouldn't ever do this kind of new build. It's inordinately expensive, it takes forever, and you're not quite free to create the type of house you really want because of all the Italian property laws. That said, it is the only legal way to execute this kind of renovation if you're working with a falling down, unlivable structure like the chicken coop or a barn. It's funny because now there are so many laws and permits to get for every project, while the main house has none of the seismic earthquake foundations that the chicken coop requires, and yet it has sat happily here on this hill for hundreds of years, withstood wind and storms and 2 world wars. However, it hasn't really ever been lived in full time by Guido's family, although his parents did many renovations to the main house and surrounding buildings when Guido was a child. We're gradually going through the rooms and trying to decide how to renovate and arrange things to make the house work with our lifestyle, which is basically me cooking 24/7. I have a video on this recipe I'm doing for homemade sfogliatelle soon. Guido needs an office. I need an editing room. We need to put wood pellet heating installed throughout the entire house because currently we just use the fireplace and a little stove. And very soon we're going to be creating a new master bedroom and a dream bathroom, which I cannot wait to begin. However, one of the rooms I'm particularly excited about is the salotto, or living room on the ground floor, which used to be a stable. You can still see the giant rings bolted to the walls, which were used to tie up the animals. The vaulted ceiling is breathtaking, and we are currently in discussion with the surveyor to understand if we can get a permit to add a fireplace down here. Now, let's talk about floors in terracotta, or cotto as they are called here. If you renovate a villa or farmhouse in Italy, often you will find these beautiful terracotta floors that look rustic and ancient, but are so much more work than one might assume. Cotto is a porous material that absorbs everything, so it means if you drop coffee or any food, it will usually stain. For example, one of Egisto's cats walked in and peed on the floor one day, and it is now permanently stained. It needs to be cleaned with acid, waxed, treated, buffed, polished, protected, and cleaned with special products. You may say, why bother going to all that work? Just rip it up and lay down some flooring that is easy to maintain and clean. But this is why I live in Italy, because easy, fast, and modern is not in my vocabulary. And I think everything that makes this country so seductive is because there are people who still believe in taking the path that preserves history. I love time-consuming, back-breaking, tedious work, whether in the kitchen, the wardrobe, the garden, the lounge room. Anything that protects and celebrates the beauty of another era for some reason gives me boundless energy and patience. Judging by your emails to me, I think many of you are like this too. And even if you're not a masochist, that's fine. You can just snuggle down in your comfy position without breaking a sweat and live vicariously through my experience of protecting this terracotta floor. I'm going to bring it back to life to transform this stable into a beautiful, cozy living room and dining room. The rich red tones you might see in historic villas are achieved with years of waxing in oil. Some Italians use linseed oil. Guido's mother Diana told me a while ago that many of the rooms upstairs were oiled with burnt tractor oil. I know it sounds bizarre that these vivid earthy tones were achieved by something so dirty, but how wonderful, how Italian to recycle something which is in great supply on a farm and would just be disposed of. I went to speak with Egisto and Eva, the caretakers who have lived on the property their entire life since they were born, and they confirmed that they had both at one point been on their hands and knees with Guido's father one time and another time with Guido's mother, rubbing in burnt tractor oil to the floor. So the first job was to move all the furniture that was in this room out with the help of my parents. Then I had to vacuum thoroughly, which doesn't seem like much, but it made me realize what a big space this is. The challenge here is that several years ago, the whole room flooded when a pipe burst on a bathroom above and all the wax and treatment came off, and now the room has large patches of light stone that is vulnerable to stains, and then very dark edges where the wax has remained.
Our Nobel laureate in psychology, and well deserved.
Technically, a psychologist, but a Nobel laureate in economics, which is the only thing you could, I guess, qualify
Yes. And somebody will jump in and say economics isn't a real Nobel Prize.
Right. You wake up in the morning and you're thinking about your life. That ability to answer that you're satisfied, that you wouldn't change a thing. Love and compassion and connection and it's friendship. It's like depending on the circumstance.
When I went over to speak with Egisto, one of the builders working on the chicken coop came over and gave his advice on terracotta.
Il fatto purtroppo è così, avanti ci si fa, cioè nel senso te poi si parte da chiaro, perché poi scurì scurisci, ma torna indietro ha detto no, sicché si parte con una tonalità chiara, lo vede, ma un po' più scuro, allora si aumenta, e poi vai, perché se te parti subito con lo scuro indietro non ci torni, mai è così. Però col cotto bisogna starci attento perché è un materiale che assorbe. Infatti è allergico al caffè, al vino, l'olio è allergico, si dice che è allergico nel senso che
la reazione.
Si parte in commercio da 10 euro al metro, si arriva anche a 300 euro al metro, specialmente quelli spagnoli fatti a mano, 250-280 euro vogliono al metro quadrato.
Okay, so I've just been talking with Egisto and some of the builders who are working on the Palaio. And everyone sort of has a different story. It's actually like asking anyone in Italy for a specific recipe for any particular dish. Everyone has their own thoughts. So now I have olivino, I have this tractor oil, and I have this treatment as well. I'm just going to try. The trouble is that there was this flood many years ago, and it came in from up above, and then it just destroyed so many parts of the cotto, of the terracotta, and so it's not one consistent colour. So I think I'll just have to go by hand and assess each tile, and then decide what I put on. I mean, I can put a mix of maybe linseed and tractor oil. It sounds crazy, tractor oil, but I quite like using something that was just going to be thrown away. Cominciamo! So you see here, it's just completely worn away, and here it's not. There's just so many different shades. I mean, here it's super dark. I figure it's good to try first in the place where this urn is, so that I don't make any mistakes. Wow. That is black.
In the end, I decided to buy some linseed oil and mix it with the tractor oil for the parts of the floor that were already quite dark and don't need too much colour. You can't just mop this stuff on or use a cloth. Egisto and Eva told me it's crucial that you get on your knees and scrub hard with a brush to really ensure the oil is absorbed into the crevices of the terracotta. To prevent stains and achieve a more cohesive colour throughout the whole room, I need to fill these tiles up with oil, essentially so their pores are blocked. Guido's up in Florence for his work, so I'm just alone this week. And for these jobs, I quite enjoy the solitude. A good podcast, a challenge, and all the while I'm thinking about what colour couches and rugs and art I could find and fill this place with. I can already imagine the people who will write, "No, not white, it's so hard to keep clean." But do you know what? In almost all the houses I've lived in London, a loft in Covent Garden, a flat in Shoreditch, un bilocale in a palazzo in Rome, a cottage in Positano, a high-rise apartment in Melbourne, I've always had white couches and they've never been a problem. On the contrary, they always brighten a room and make me feel fresh and cozy, elegant but not too busy. So they really transition well between the seasons, and white is actually easier to bleach than a colour where you would notice a discoloration if you clean a spot.
The building of democracy, when you were like behind closed doors was every bit as noble as what is how you seem to be in public. And, oh yeah, they just want to sit your life.
Exactly. I mean, there's just several projections from courses earlier.
Oh.
You know, suppose you say it's spent out.
I was like a little girl on Christmas this morning. I rushed down to check the floor because you just don't know how the terracotta is going to respond. Sometimes it absorbs it all. Sometimes it looks exactly like it did dry and you have to put on more. Sometimes it changes color completely. We're not living in this space, so I can leave it for a whole week to absorb. And then Egisto and Eva said it won't even need waxing after that. But we shall see. I might be tempted to polish it with wax as well.
Good morning.
So it's looking good. Looking good, looking good. It's still very wet. Don't know if this means it hasn't absorbed it, or I think it just takes a while to dry out.
I've got to finish. I want to finish before Guido gets back here. He's driving down from Florence tonight, so back to the gloves. Let's go. Got some, ran out of linseed oil, so I've got some more that, if you can see this is pretty much, I think someone bought this in the 40s or 50s. But Gisto said it should still be good. So question is, how do I gradually, I don't know if I should do it. What should I do? Okay. Problem is, well, it's not a problem so much as a concern is that if I were to ruin this antique floor, well, Guido's not here and his parents are not here, I will feel horribly, horribly guilty. So I just need to be sure that I'm doing everything properly, testing, and not ruining anything. But anyway. Here where the floor isn't even, it's sort of all drained down into the corners, so I'm going to try and remove some of that so that... But this was the area that was the most affected by the flood. Well, so it wasn't at all coloured. So hopefully that will be okay. I keep getting my hair in my face and oil in my hair, so right now I have a dirty rag in my hair, and the peasant outfit look is complete. Back on the gloves. Oh no, I should move the lamps while I've got my gloves off.
Of course, the space will need quite a big rug. I wish I could go back to Iran and get something magnificent from the artisans I visited in Kashan and Tabriz and Shiraz. Or perhaps I should go for something French like these. I just found them on this second-hand site in Italy. Which do you prefer? Guido's home. He's gonna see the room. Oh.
Ciao!
Bentornato!
What a drive. Tutto bene? How are you?
I'm...
Vieni.
Ok.
Ok.
Hang on. Non vedo nulla.
Accendi la luce.
Ecco.
Ok.
Oh, maybe I should do these tiles as well. Look, they really need a wax, no?
Yeah.
Aspetta.
What? Wow! You've done all the floor in these days?
See?
Amazing! Bravissima! Wow.
Is it okay?
Yeah, it looks amazing.
Scusa, non lo vedo bene. You don't see it very well, but...
No. Wow.
Puzza un po', eh?
Però anche la lodolino di sotto, secondo me ha fatto un lavorone bravissimo.
Grazie, amore.
Complimenti. But this room will become amazing, bravissimo.
Oh, don't. It's going to be so cozy.
Yeah, amazing.
And now we just have to get your opinion on what colour for the rug and the couch.
Which are the options?
I'll show you.
Okay.
Thank you for watching. See you next Friday. Alla prossima.
Thank you.